back vibe, baby.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe, and I'm real excited today to talk to my guest, Oliver C. Oliver's been sober since April 29th, 2012, and is living proof that recovery can open the door to a truly full and adventurous life. Of Taiwanese descent and raised in a Buddhist household, Oliver is a proud first-generation Asian American and the oldest of two in a large, close-knit family. He's also a devoted dad to two amazing kids, Donovan, 19, and Jasmine, 17, who keep him grounded and grateful. When he's not spending time with family, you'll probably find Oliver on a golf course, at a poker table, underwater with a scuba tank, or somewhere exploring the world, which is where he's at today, coming live from Bangkok, Thailand. And he brings the same curiosity and calm spirit into his recovery, always learning, always growing. I'm excited to dive into his story of transformation, family, and freedom in recovery. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Hi, Oliver. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Joe. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. I have to tell folks who are listening, Oliver has made the ultimate sacrifice. It is about 6 a.m. where he is at right now. So I am truly grateful that you're doing this, and I appreciate you being on the show.
100%, Joe. I appreciate you inviting me. Yeah, I mean, it's not a sacrifice. It's a small small sacrifice, I guess. I had to get up pretty early. Did you mention Thailand?
Yeah.
Yeah. Extended vacation, family reunion type deal. So yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But glad to join.
I'm glad you're here. So tell me, what was it like growing up, Oliver?
Growing up, Oliver. Let's see. I guess this is the what it was like part, right? Growing up, I know that in the intro you said that I come from a very large, close-knit family. That might be a little misleading because I do come from a very large family, large extended family. On my mother's side, she has 10 siblings. So I have, a ton of cousins on that side. My father was the oldest of 5. So between my two parents, I had like 17 sets or 16 15. Gosh, I can't even keep track. 15 sets of aunts and uncles, with cousins everywhere. But I wouldn't say that we were close knit because we were spread out all over the world. My family originated from Taiwan, and my parents immigrated to America back in the early 70s. And so I had a couple of aunts and uncles that lived where I grew up, which is like right outside of Philadelphia, in southern New Jersey, South Jersey. Not far from Atlantic City. I was like 10 minutes over the bridge from Philadelphia. There's a pretty large, pretty healthy little Chinese American, Asian American community out there. And so I was brought up pretty traditional. I didn't learn English until I was getting ready to go to kindergarten. So I guess my earliest memory, and part of me thinks this has kind of contributed to the the whole alcoholism part of feeling like, not a part of. I had I had an accent, like I said, because I didn't learn English till kindergarten. So in school, I was kind of picked on and bullied. Made it a real point to try to learn how to speak English better. So it was tough from a very early age to fit in, to try to fit in. Um, we were really close at home. Like I said, it was traditional Chinese family. I spoke Mandarin, still speak Mandarin as I guess it's my first language. I guess if you want to, to be exact about it. Um, but yeah, alcohol was always a part of my life. My dad was a heavy drinker. He was an alcoholic. If I could diagnose, I would. But I'm not here to diagnose him. He for sure, I believe, was 100% alcoholic. He died as a direct result of alcohol. He got drunk one day, fell, hit his head on the pavement, and died. So yeah, but ever since a young age, alcohol was a big part. My dad gambled, drank. He was a business owner, restaurant owner. He was successful. He had a lot of friends, and so growing up, there was just alcohol everywhere. And I started drinking at a very, I experimented with alcohol at a very young age. I can't pinpoint exactly when, but I have vivid memories of being at family functions, and dabbling and thinking it was cool, to do it amongst my cousins and friends and stuff. And I just remember from the very first drop, it was heaven, man. I loved it, and I think I've been chasing that feeling, man, since that age.
How old were you when kind of you felt that first effect of alcohol?
Like I said, I can't pinpoint exactly. I've tried to think about it. I think the very earliest memory that I had was a Chinese New Year celebration, and I don't remember if this was the very first time, but I remember getting drunk, and I remember passing out, kind of half. It was like a halfway passing out on the. Actually, we were at my dad's restaurant in Pensacola, New Jersey, and I was in one of the booths at the restaurant, and I was like passed out. My face is kind of like smeared against the side of the booth, and my cousins were like laughing and picking on me, and I felt so good. And even though they were making fun of me and picking on me, like, oh my God, look at he's drunk. I felt like, I think being the center of attention and I felt cool and I don't know. I can't explain it, but I remember that was one of my very first memories of drinking. And God, yeah, like I said, I must have been, no, I don't think I was 5. I don't remember. I was very young though. I would say like 7 or 8 maybe. But it wasn't like I, was drinking consistently at that point. It wasn't until I was actually a really good student all the way through middle school, entering high school, and then my family uh, situation, like, dynamic changed. My parents got divorced. My dad moved out to the West Coast to LA to pursue the restaurant business out in LA. I remained back with my sister, and I remained back in New Jersey. And let me see. There was some custody stuff going on. My grandfather passed away, and he lived in Northridge, California. We came out for the funeral for my grandfather, and we never went back. Well, we didn't go back to New Jersey, which devastated my mother at the time. It's probably that decision was probably, looking back, was the turning point. Because when I came out here, I had no supervision. I got in with a bad crowd. I went from a straight A student, probably headed for college and all that, back east, to ditching school and getting high, drinking a lot. At this point, I'm like 12 or 13, dabbling in various chemicals, drugs. I used to hang out with these like death metal like guys, right? I mean, walk around with like steel toe boots with long hair, and we used to go to these backyard shows, man, and just and I'm hanging out with these older guys. I thought it was so cool, man. There's chicks everywhere. It's I'm experimenting, with women, and I mean literally women, right? Because I'm like 13, messing with these 18, 19-year-old girls. It was crazy. It got so bad that my dad finally was like, you know what, you're I had got kicked out of school, so he sent me back to live with my mother. And by the time I got back there, I don't there was no going back to the good Oliver, let's put it that way. So I went back to Jersey, and and I brought all that with me, and all the craziness with me, and just progressed with there. So when I was 16, I got caught at school with a large amount of weed, and rather than kick me out of school, they opted to send me to rehab. So I went to my very first rehab when I was 16 years old. Um, it was this place called White Deer Run in upstate Pennsylvania, and they came and picked me up, drove me up there. Man, it's in the middle of nowhere. Huge culture, like huge shock, man. It was like literally out upstate Pennsylvania in the middle of like the woods. They had bear traps lined around the property of this rehab, big old drums, right? I guess to catch stray bears. So they were like, yeah, you're welcome to leave, but you got nowhere to go. So, I remember I did a 30-day stint there. I spent Thanksgiving and Christmas as a 16-year-old in rehab with grown ass like junkies and full blown alcoholics, right? I'm just a 16-year-old. I'm like, man, I just want to party, I just want to be cool and hang out and get laid. And can I say that? Okay, whatever. Oh, that's my story. um, so I did that, and when I got out, I relapsed right away. Um, but then I relapsed for like a couple of days right away when I got out of rehab at 16, and but then I forget exactly what happened, but my mother kind of pushed for me to go to meetings. So I started attending uh, 12-step program. I know I think you mentioned we're not really supposed to mention one or the other, but anyhow, um, it was for I'll just say it was for drugs. But I kind of got plugged in. I met a bunch of guys that were really cool, man, and my sponsor at the time was like, I think he was like 28 at the time and had like 10 years. And the guys that I got in with were like adrenaline junkies. They were really into like just, I mean, pushing the limits. We used to go rock climbing, man, with no ropes. I mean, dangerous shit. You slip and fall and you're toast, right? I mean, we used to go shooting, stuff that I had never been exposed to. It was fun stuff to do. Like, the guys were really cool. So I did that, and I think I stayed clean and sober for I think just short of a year. And then, by that time I'm getting to like senior year of high school. And so that whole coming of age thing, I think, in senior year or whatever, kind of took over, wanting to hang out with my graduating class, partying, last year of school, getting ready for college. Well, as a result of staying clean and sober for that amount of time, my I started doing really well in school, right? My grades got back up. I actually got into this university in Pennsylvania called Kutztown University. So once I got accepted, it was kind of like my ticket to like, oh, like, well, hey, look, I'm good now. I can party again, right? I'm 16. I'm not like these other guys that I see at these meetings, right? You know what I mean? Like these guys are, got needles in their arms, and they're living out on the streets, and they look like crap, right? Their families they don't even have family, right? But I got this loving mother, and my sister's here back from California. I'm looking good. Like I said, I'm young. I don't have the same experiences. So yeah, I decided to join my classmates and go and party, and it didn't go downhill right away. I had a lot of fun with it for a little bit, but it kind of it did. The alcoholism definitely took over. I should probably go back and say that that obsessiveness and compulsiveness was evident from a young age looking back. I mean, 15, 16 years old, I was always just trying to outdrink everybody in an effort to look cool, but really it was just because I loved the feeling and wanted to just be smashed all the time. Did all the drugs I could. That's all I thought about, right? I was consumed by it. So the last year of high school, towards the end, like graduation, I got in an argument with a teacher, and we got into it was a little bit of well, not a little bit, it was a physical altercation with a teacher in high school. So because of my previous track record with getting caught with drugs and all that, they were going to kick me out right before graduation. But instead, my mother went in. I remember she was with the principal crying. She begged them to allow me to graduate. So they gave me my diploma, but I never walked in graduation, which was like a huge, huge like disappointment to my mother, you know. So, but I did get into to the university and went off about 2 hours away from school. So now I'm like all alone on my own, you know, with I mean, it was just unrestrained. And it was my first time, I think. Well, even though I was pretty independent as a kid, you know, with living with my father, but college was just a whole other thing. I mean, I'm in this environment where it's just fueled by alcohol, right? You know, I never went to class. I got kicked out pretty quick. Transferred it back in closer to home, thinking that that would fix it, right? Like being closer to home, maybe living at home would help me maybe get back on track. Not ever thinking about, oh, you know, wanting to give up drinking. It was just, you know, let me try to get back home where, you know, under the watchful eye of my loving mother, and maybe that'll, you know, help fix things a little bit. Well, it didn't. If anything, it made it worse because, you know, I started hanging out with the kids that I went to high school with, who they were not headed anywhere, right? Because, you know, they stayed back home. None of them, you know, most of them didn't go to college. They were working at the local gas station, whatever, and just partying, you know, like. So that's pretty much what I did. And so I knew. So at this point now, so then okay, so I transferred back to a school called Rowan University in South Jersey. I got kicked out of there pretty quick. And both times I got kicked out because of alcohol. And I won't go into those stories, but basically I got caught with alcohol on campus. And I got cited. I got charges actually, like actual, you know, misdemeanor charges for underage drinking both times. And so I got kicked out of school. Um, but so I started working, and I was thinking, you know, I got the bright idea to do a geographical, right? Thinking again, if I moved, right, got away, maybe things will work out, and all I gotta do is just get away from these people, right? You know, and start over. Because I always felt like I'm a pretty smart guy, pretty resourceful. I can, you know, if I could just focus on myself, I'll be okay. So I got the bright idea to save up some money, buy a train ticket, and head to California, which is what I did. Jumped on a not a Greyhound, jumped on a train. It's like a it's like a 5 day ride out across the United States through Chicago. I remember laying over in Chicago, going up through Denver, man, down through New Mexico. So this is my very first taste of like traveling, and I loved it. Right? I mean, just seeing like things, you know, the countryside, everything, people, meeting people that were just different, you know, from different walks of life, man. And I guess we'll get to that later, is why I'm here in Bangkok, Thailand, you know. But traveling kind of, I got the traveling bug at that point, you know. But while I was on that train, I was strung out on heroin. Because at this point, I'm shooting heroin and doing a lot of other drugs. But getting on the train was a what do you call it? Premeditated, I guess, a planned thing. I wanted to kick heroin, and I thought that if I were to be on a train without access to any heroin, I could kick for 5 days on the train, and by the time I land in LA, I'll be clean and detoxed, right? The self detox, and I'll be great, and then we'll start all over. Well, we laid over in Chicago. It was about one day into what day and a half, whatever, into Chicago. We laid over in Chicago, and I'll never forget this, man. I walk out of the train station there. The Sears Tower is right there. I'd never been to Chicago, and I'm looking to score because I'm sick, right? And I walk out, and I could talk about this, right? Okay. And so anyway, I walk out
Absolutely.
this guy, and he's singing. He's sitting there humming and singing Phil Collins, "Can You Feel It Coming in the Night?" Right? And he's beatboxing and this and that. And I've been around, man. In Philly, I used to hang around some pretty gnarly neighborhoods, man, out in Philadelphia. I mean, you guys can look it up. The listeners, man, you can look up Kensington, Philadelphia, man. Now it's like zombie town. It's become a closed market, open market heroin, fentanyl spot in Philadelphia where the authorities have just allowed people to just go in and stay in Kensington and do whatever they want. And that's where that was my old stomping grounds. I used to walk. It was crazy. Anyhow, I get to Chicago. My first thought was, let me find the first homeless guy I see. And so I knew I approached this dude who was like beatboxing Phil Collins. And I said, "Hey man, what are you hustling for out here?" He's like, "Man, I just want something to eat." I said, "Cool, I'll buy you lunch if you could take me to the spot." We jumped in a taxi, we went, I scored. And so that whole plan of landing in LA clean and sober did not work out, because by the time I get to LA, and of course I get to Grand Central Station, and it's right there off of Skid Row, right? So I get out of there, and I find Skid Row pretty quick. Um, and it wasn't off and running at that point, because I actually did kick about a couple of weeks after I got into LA, and I tried to make a go at it. I was drinking a lot at this point, because I replaced the heroin with the alcohol. And I I connected with some old friends from when I used to live with my father out in LA. I was living with this girl, and things didn't work out between me and her, and so I moved out, and I was living. I just jumped around from place to place, garage, like just looked up in the newspapers, man, for rooms for rent. I lived in some makeshift garages. I lived in back houses. I lived all over, from Pacoima, Arleta, to Canoga Park, over to Eagle Rock, back over to Studio City, and then out to like Altadena, back to Eagle Rock. It was a mess, and eventually I found my way back to heroin, and it was shortly after that. At this point, I started shooting speedballs, which was heroin and cocaine mixed together, and that's when things got really, really just desperate and ugly. I started having to do a lot of illegal activities to try to support my habit, and so I get arrested a few times pretty quickly in succession, within like a two-year period, all for drug possession. But I started starting to go into jail, spending time in jail. And I remember, man, the first time I went, I was so scared. But what's scary looking back is that I got used to it, got comfortable, being in jail. Um, I I I I started making my rounds through the rehabilitation system in Southern California. If you name a rehab or a detox or a inpatient facility in Southern California, I've probably been through it. I mean, yeah. I mean, you name it. I've been through Tarzana. I've been through Tarzana detox probably no less than a dozen times. Um, and got clean, got out, relapsed. I've been through their residential treatment, I think 3 times. I've been to People in Progress. I've been to American Hospital, Cry Help, you name it. I've met famous people. And I'm not gonna name them here. I'm gonna keep their anonymity, but I've done stints in rehab with some pretty famous people. It's crazy the people that I've met. I mean, I've just been through, Anyway, the last straw, the judge was like, "Man, there's nowhere I can send you. You keep just leaving." And that was my MO. I would meet people in rehab or detox. We would hatch these grand schemes, and we take off together. Right? It was just a way to meet people. But then the judge finally said, "You know what? The judge, they kept giving me chances. Even though I kept violating on my suspended sentences, the judge finally said, 'I'll give you one last shot. I'm going to send you where no one wants to go, um, and where you've probably never been, and that's Lancaster, California.' So I went to Lancaster, California to come over, and I'm like, I can't even believe this is part of LA County, man. This is like the desert. It was nothing out there. I pull up over this. I'm on this bus going over this hill. Um, yeah, I mean, the judge wasn't joking, man. It was like it was kind of like back to my very first rehab, where it was like, yeah, you're welcome to leave, but you're not gonna like it out out in the surrounding area. So I went, and and that's kind of like, I would say, if you were to split my recovery into, like, what do they call it when you do like plays, acts, right? Like this is the second act of my life, coming to Lancaster, California, because that is where I eventually got sober. It took a while. I had various stints of sobriety. Um, One stint lasted about 5 years, and I relapsed. Another one, maybe a year or two. But I met the people the men that would eventually help to get me sober and help me to stay sober, and and to remain sober to this day, one day at a time. 13 years, which is, even when I say it now and think about it, it's beyond my imagination. You know what I mean? To think that I put together that many days, that I'm coming up on 14, which is crazy, But the men in that I met in Lancaster, California, were very instrumental. After I landed in Lancaster, I went through Tarzana Treatment Center. I did like a 90-day program, turned into a 5-month program, but then they shot me into sober living. While I was in sober living, I was hanging out with a bunch of guys, and we're trying our best to stay sober. I gave the full effort. I was going to meetings, had a sponsor. I was doing the deal, and put together, I think, a couple of years. At this point, the sober living turned into just an actual house. I think the owner of the sober living got fed up with a lot of the guys that are in the house, just not pretty much stiffing him on the rent bills and stuff. So he turned it into a regular house, and I ended up renting this house with 3 other guys that all had pretty good solid sobriety and clean time. And I'm working at this point. I'm working at a local diner called Crazy Autos. Um, had some solid guys around me. One of which is Sean C, who was also one of your guests on this show, good friend of both of ours, neighbor of yours now. He was my sponsor. He became my sponsor. We both, I mean, he had less than a year. I'm still in rehab at this point when we met, and we became fast friends, man. And Sean has remained a rock and a steady presence in my life, ever since, since those days, since that time. Um, Me and Sean, man, if it wasn't for Sean, especially Sean and a couple other guys, but namely Sean and one other guy named Dave G, um, who we recently lost. I don't know if I'd be sitting here right now in Bangkok, Thailand, or anywhere. I'll get to that in a second. But I met. I think I mentioned way early, when I was young. Gambling's always been a part of my life, right? I just, ever since a kid, it was just, that was gambling was just always in my home. My parents used to play mahjong, which is an old Chinese gambling game. As soon as I remember, when I was in middle school, I used to run little football pools, man. Talk a lot of sports with my buddies. as soon as I could, I was, hitting casinos. But anyhow, so when I was in this sober living, we were playing pinochle. Bunch of guys, something I learned how to play in when I was locked up. Let's play a lot of pinochle, and we one day we were playing, and everybody's about to take off, and I'm like, hey man, I'm not done. I'm not done playing, man. I want to play some more cards. And they're like, oh, there's a casino up the street. So I'm like, okay, I'm like, let's go. So we go up there, and you know, pretty much from that moment on, I became a regular at that casino. I ended up meeting um, my wife well, she's my ex-wife now, but I ended up meeting the woman that would become my wife there. She was a dealer. I got in with her and her friends. They soon help me become a dealer at that casino. And that's kind of where that was the reason I mentioned all this is because that took me in a whole nother direction. I tried to maintain my presence in a 12-step program, going to meetings and stuff like that. But slowly I was getting pulled away into like the nightlife and the style, even though I was trying to stay sober and clean. I was hanging around a lot of people that were partying and, um, I'm in a casino. I'm working late nights, gambling. It was just a whole nother lifestyle. Anyway, this woman, she ended up getting pregnant. We eventually we ended up having two kids. Things were actually pretty good, man. I was making good money at the casino. We bought a house out in Rosamond. Um, a couple brand new cars, man. I thought everything was great. Again, like I'm looking good, I'm smelling good. Everything's great. Everybody's like loving me. So I said, I think it wouldn't hurt, man, to have a beer, with the fellas, man, to watch a ball game or something. I think it actually happened after like a bad stint on the blackjack table, where I was pissed off, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go have a drink, and that's when things, my wife at the time had never seen me drink. I'd been the whole time I was with her, for what was like 4 years or whatever. I was clean and sober, and so it was a big shock for her because I didn't really expect it to, but man, it took off right where it felt like it took off right where I had left off. Like it was like it went from 0 to 100 right away. Um, I remember it was like the first night I was like, you know what, just gonna drink with the guys, have a couple beers at the bar. Like it seemed like within 10 or 15 minutes, I'm back at the house by myself with a bottle, just getting drunk. And it was crazy, yeah, that the disease, man, seems like, I think they have a saying, like when you got to be careful because when you're sober, clean and sober, man, your disease is in the back doing push-ups, getting stronger. And that's what it was, man. It was quick. Like, we lost our cars, we lost our house, everything, just because couldn't save any money. I'm drinking at this point. I'm back, doing drugs again, and I started smoking crack, which I hate. I hated crack, and yet I smoked it for like a year straight every single day. I don't even, and it was, but at this point, man, I'm having marital issues. We have no money. It was, even though I was making decent money at this casino still, just, couldn't put two nickels together. We, ended up splitting with my wife and eventually divorcing. And, that was a pretty messy thing. At this whole time, the men and alcoholics, can I say that? Can I say,
It's
but
okay.
Alcoholics Anonymous
You can say.
life, man. I can't. I think it would do a disservice, man, if I didn't mention it. Um, because the men in those rooms, man, brought me back from the brink. I started popping prescription pills, and I was strung out on prescription pills at this point. I was drinking really heavily. Um, I don't know how I hung on to my job. I mean, the guys I work with, just I've known for years, so they love me, man. They were trying to help me out, even though was not in any good shape. Like when I was working, if I showed up for work, the casino business, thank God, is very lax as far as attendance because there's such a other dealers are just wanting to work so bad that you could take a day off and they don't care. And I took many days off because I was strung out. And so I got the bright idea that I could I could kick the prescription drugs if I just stayed inebriated, man. If I just drank myself stupid every day. And so I did. I went to Bevmo. I loaded up a cart with the cheapest freaking liquor that I could get. These little plastic gallons of like vodka and everything. Man, loaded up a whole cart, drove it home, locked myself in my house, and just drank every day, getting over the withdrawal symptoms from prescription pills. Did it for about 2 weeks, but then I quickly became very physically addicted to alcohol. Where man, the DTs like looking back, I always, even all through all the phases of like active alcoholism and drug addiction, man, when I was using and drinking, for whatever reason, I always thought alcohol was not the problem, right? The drugs were the problem, right? I never, I don't know why, I never attached any of the bad stuff to alcohol. Alcohol was always like just it was on the side. It was something that, helped me get by. But it became very apparent, man, and obviously looking back, that man, alcohol was the biggest problem that I had. It was always the trigger. It was always the gateway. It was always it was always there. It was a constant. But anyhow, in the end, I was, man, I used to just chug uh, liquor, man, because I would wake up, not, I can't even say the night before. It was just whenever I woke up, whenever I came to, and I'm just shaking, man, sweating, sick, and I would just have to run to the kitchen and just down a bunch of liquor just to feel better. And I'm locked in my house at this point. I don't even know if I had clothes on. My house was, and so actually, I should probably throw in there that as a result of the divorce, I got custody of my two kids, right? Because I did go through another stint of recovery, and I was doing pretty well with the kids. I did relapse, and things got pretty. That's kind of where the story led to the end of the story, to when I got eventually got sober. I called my ex-wife and I said, "Look, I'm drinking again. Can you take the kids? Because I'm a freaking mess." So she took the kids, which was only supposed to be. She only was watching them for 2 days out of the week. I had them the other 5 days because she was working and stuff like that. And those 2 days turned into three, turned into four, turned into a week. And she's on the phone with me like, "Look, I can't keep these kids any longer. I got work. I can't afford to pay these babysitters. You're supposed to watch them, but I'm just drunk, man." She actually called the cops because they came over to my house at one point because she thought that I was gonna like hurt myself. I never had in my mind that I was gonna intentionally hurt myself. Like, I never wanted to die, but I sure wish that something would have happened to kill me. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I remember walking down the street, man, in downtown LA, just, please, man, can a car just hop the curb and just take me out? But I never had the balls, or I never really wanted to die. I just didn't want to be around anymore, like to live like that. And I remember sitting in my living room at that point, like, man, I'm just gonna drink myself to death. Like, I'm not gonna off myself, like, by shooting myself in the head, or you know, popping a bunch of pills. I'm just gonna drink and drink and drink until till the lights go out, and that was my thought, because I'd given up. I just didn't think that I could get sober again. I thought that if I did get sober, it's just gonna be another replay of what's been happening over the year, ever since I was a kid, which is, I'll get a little stint in recovery and relapse, and things will get worse and worse and worse. So that's what I did. I just locked myself in the house and drank. I didn't eat. My house was a freaking disaster, man. This is a house that I was supposed to, be watching two kids in. This whole time they're at their mothers, and there's puke all over the kitchen floor. I mean, there's maggots, there's rotten food, there's empty bottles, there's, I mean, everything, and I have friends coming over to check on me. I think that there are pictures of me sprawled out naked somewhere, with bottles strewn all around. I think there's pictures of that somewhere on the interweb. Sean and Dave came over and they were trying to help me, and it was not a pretty sight, man. And a funny story. It was like I was in the casino business, man. People are just readily willing to like loan you money. Money just kind of goes around, right? So if you need money, people will loan it to you because when they need money, you kind of return the favor, right? So during this whole time, I'm just borrowing money because I wasn't working, just at home, driving my little car, to the liquor store and just every day or not, or, every other day or so, getting more alcohol. So I saw at one point, Sean, comes over, my buddy Sean comes over, and apparently they had disabled my car without me knowing. They pulled the spark plugs. I go out to the car to try to start it up, and it's the car's not starting. I'm thinking it's out of gas because this car had the gas gauge was broken, and I can't remember the last time I put gas in it. So I'm thinking it's out of gas. So I'm actually calling Sean like, hey man, because he's trying to help. He's calling me like just checking on me, making sure I'm not dead. And the whole time I'm asking him, I'm like, hey man, can you bring some gas over, man? I need some gas for my car because I can't get to the store. He's like, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll be there tomorrow, And I'm like, cool, man, cool, And so this whole time now I'm walking to the store. It's like a mile walk to the liquor store every day. And I'm walking back, and again the next day I get him on the phone. I'm like, bro, when you coming over with this gas, man? I'm tired of walking to the store. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there like tomorrow. I'm like, okay. He would actually come over and I forgot the gas, man. And I'm like, come on, man. I mean, I got to get some gas in my car just so I can get to the store and fill it up. And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. This whole time it was like a ploy between him and Dave. It's just so they can get me off the road, right? To kind of, they might, who knows, man. They probably saved me from a lot, something worse, right? But it wasn't until about, I don't know, maybe a week or so later. The timeline during this time is really hazy. I still can't put together, like, I know some of the events that happened. I don't know what came first or what came after. I know that I had gone to the hospital for alcohol poisoning or something. I know the cops showed up a couple of times. I know that friends stopped by to drop off food and money. I know that I walked a couple of different long walks to the liquor store. But eventually, um, Sean and Dave came over, and they were like, dude, you got to get out of here, man. You're going to die. Like, I don't know exactly what prompted or what happened or who mentioned it or whose idea it was, but Dave used to own a plumbing shop called Patriot Plumbing over in Lancaster, and Sean used to own a diner in town. So Dave took me to his shop, cleared out a shelf at his plumbing shop, threw some blankets and a pillow, and said, "You're staying here." And meanwhile, his workers in this plumbing shop were walking by like, "Who the hell is this guy crashed out on a freaking store shelf?" Like shaking and sweating. I'm trying to. They basically like kidnapped me to try in an effort to get me sober. To try to help me stop drinking. And so I just remember there was a few days where I was in Dave's shop during the day. And when he would close up shop and Sean would close up his diner, because his diner closed at like 2 p.m. Dave would drive me over to Sean's house and Sean would babysit me for the night. And he would, Sean would sit with me on the couch. I couldn't sleep. And then the next morning, he'd take me back to Dave's shop. Dave would babysit me during the day. And, I got sober. And again, I don't know if it was, I think a part of it was against my will. I don't know if I really wanted to get sober, but I think they were determined to get me sober once again. And I did. And, man, it was rough, man. I was in rough shape. It hurt. It hurt physically. I remember sitting in meetings, man, just my skin's on pins and needles, man. I'm shaking. All I can think about is drinking. I didn't have any money. I couldn't afford cigarettes. I couldn't, man. My kids, my, ex-wife is like, kids got to come back. And I'm like, and then so at that time, I just went to meetings, man. I lived in meetings, went to meetings every day, all day, man. Morning meeting to the noon meeting to the evening meeting. There was a men's stag that was very pivotal, where I met a lot of the guys that were instrumental. Once again, but definitely that last stint. Um, I ended up losing the place that I was living at, so I had to move into this little room at my buddy John's house with him and his family, and I'm trying to, raise these two little kids, man. They were like 5 and 3 at the time. I had nothing. I'm driving this beat up old car, man. I'm trying to get to work and still gambling, and so that's not helping. But I'm staying sober, man. I'm staying sober. I'm getting plugged in. I'm working with my sponsor. I went back through the steps, man, and so I kind of got to get to this part because this was a pretty important part, and I'm already getting emotional thinking about stuff like this. And I know that once I talk about this story, it's going to get even more emotional because this is this next little story. I don't even know how much time we have, Joe. I'm kind of going on because I still can't hear you. But
We got plenty of time.
okay. The intro, you mentioned that I was raised in a Buddhist household, right? So I was not raised with a Western concept of a higher power, right? Jesus Christ, God, all this stuff, right? And when you come into the rooms or when you go into any recovery 12-step program, it's God this, it's God that. I know that they talk about a higher power of your own understanding, and yet they pray out with the Lord's Prayer, right? Which is not a prayer that I subscribe to. So it is a very westernized approach to a higher power, even though they do present it like, oh, you get a higher power of your own understanding, right? And I tried for years. I don't know if that was the reason why I kept relapsing, but I struggled with that. I struggled with trying to find a higher power. And whether it's because I use that as a way to stay separated, right, from people, right, because I don't have the same God as you, right? That's why I'm not like you, or I can't have what you have. I don't know if I use that as an excuse or if that was a fact, but I know that it was an issue, right? I know that the higher power was an issue. And so, through obviously I had gone through the steps numerous times, man, through my numerous stints. Sean was my sponsor for a very long time. We went through the steps. I don't even know how many times, man. All of them, all 12. And I thought each time that I went through the steps, I thought that I did them to the best of my ability, right? There was no holding back, man. It was, I was being honest, but I always struggled with the second and third step, man, turning my will and my life over, making I mean, the decision wasn't, uh, just the whole, it was just very tough. It was very tough because I could not grasp. People are like, oh, use a doorknob as your higher power. Use the rooms as your higher power. Man, it just none of that stuff ever worked, and there was always something missing. And so I felt at that point. So when I got back in this last time, I guess almost 14 years ago, I felt like a change. I needed a change. I needed a different perspective, right? So I changed sponsors, and I went to Dave G, who if anybody knew Dave, he was, again, I'm gonna get emotional. He was, I mean, just his presence in a meeting, man. He was just a very spiritual guy, man. He was a guy that walked the walk, walked the talk the talk, whatever. He was just a solid dude. There was a lot of solid guys, but Dave kind of stood out for his like really calm presence, man. Always had a when he shared, man, it just really resonated, man, because I could feel the spirituality, right? So I thought, so I changed, and I picked up Dave as a sponsor, and I told him, man, I need to focus on this. I would like to focus on the relation, trying to develop a relationship with a higher power. I do. It was like I go through all the steps. I get through step 10, man. I get to 11, and I just always in my head was like, I don't know. I don't know how to pray or meditate, right? I don't know how to improve this conscious contact with my higher power. So, I'll, things happen in life. I even with my kids, it's like I don't know why certain things stand out, right? Like in life, certain little little interactions, either with strangers or people that I know. But I know that like, and maybe the listeners or you might understand this, but like sometimes things will happen where it's like a big deal to you personally, but then when you mention it to the person that you interacted with, they're like, "Oh, I don't even remember that happening," And this was one of those instances. I was sitting in Dave's living room and we were going over, talking about the higher power once again. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
Dave said this thing. I was sitting there talking about God, and I'm just like, man, I don't feel a connection, man. And I kind of got to, I started talking about this feeling that I had that I never felt like I was good enough to be in God's presence. Right. Like
Mm.
I always looked at these people in the rooms like, oh man, this guy's got it going on, right? He's got money, he's got the nice house, the car, the job, all this stuff. He's looking good. That's why he's got a relationship with God, right? Like, and I always felt like I was such a piece of shit that God didn't want to listen, right? And Dave said these words that to this day I have to remind myself. He said, you don't have to go up to see God, man. He comes down to see you. He's always around. Like, he's always here. And I don't know why. When I heard those words, man, it was like it just clicked. Like I don't have to do anything special. I don't have to be anybody special. God's here. God's always here. And from that day on, I don't, they talk about the heavens opening up, right? And like you hear this thing, man. I wasn't quite like that, but it definitely was a life-changing experience, like interaction there. And I've mentioned that to Dave years later, and he's like, I don't even remember saying that. It's like, it was just that thing. But and to this day, I still remind myself when I get into the little jams, hey, God's here. Like, like I don't need to do anything. I don't need to, God's here with me always. And that changed my relationship with my higher power. And I believe that that's what has led me to this point. I know we're getting pretty deep into this show here, so I'm gonna get into the what it's like now part. As we said, I'm in Bangkok, Thailand. You know, um, and how I ended up here because I was in Taiwan for a couple of weeks because as a result of recovery, I got fortunate with a job opportunity. I was able to make some pretty decent money with the help of Dave's wife, Marion. Actually, she helped me to learn how to um, save my money and use it wisely. Build some savings. I started investing. Um, got to a point where I attained like I think financial freedom from financial insecurity. I've been able to do a lot of things in recovery that I've always wanted to do. Um, First and foremost, I raised my kids. They are both now in college. I'm very proud. Can't say that I was the best father, but I did the best that I could, with what I had. And it was rough for many years, man. I slept on a couch trying to raise these kids for like 4 years, man, on a shitty, old, freaking dusty couch, man. That was my bedroom. My bedroom was the living room. And we struggled, but we had a great, we had a really, I think that we had a great family life. I had great friends. Uh, you know, um, Obviously this was a result of staying sober, working the steps, getting with the people. Um, but anyhow, I got to a point where I gained some financial freedom. Um, and started doing a lot of things that I've always wanted to do. You mentioned it in early, I golf a lot. Um, when I'm home in the States, I probably golf like 3 or 4 times a week if I can. I probably would golf every single day if my body allowed. I got into scuba diving. As I met a couple of gentlemen in the rooms that are into scuba diving. One gentleman in particular, he got me into scuba diving, and that pretty much prompted my whole traveling kick. Because we started traveling. I never had a passport. Got my passport for the first time in in order to be able to travel to these distant lands to scuba dive. In my first big trip, this was a few years ago, I went to the Maldives, and I jumped on a boat and we went out. The boat sailed out for like 2 days. We stayed on the waters for a week, didn't hit land, and just dove in the middle of the Indian Ocean, man, with like sharks and like tiger sharks and whale sharks. And it was beyond, it wasn't even part of my imagination to do something like that. You know what I mean? I didn't even consider it or fathom it. And now I'm in the middle of the ocean, man, like amongst God's creation, man. It was the most beautiful thing, man. These sunrises and sunsets. I mean, literally, you look in all directions, 360 degrees, and there's not land. It was beautiful. So I started traveling a lot. I was able to, take my kids with me. My pursuit now is to collect as many passport stamps as possible. So I got to say that, going when I was in my active, when I was drinking and stuff, my relationship with my mother was very strained. It got to a point where years ago when I was in jail, called her, once again, asking her to put money on my books and stuff like that. And she just said, you know what? Don't call you anymore. I'm done. And she hung up on me and I didn't talk to her for years. Um, as a result of staying sober, I've repaired that relationship with my mother. I made amends to her. I continue to make amends to her. It's one of the reasons I'm out here now is because she wanted to visit Taiwan. One of her dreams was to visit Taiwan with me and my sister. My sister lives in England. And because, we're separated by distance, my sister is married with 2 kids. I was trying to raise 2 kids. The family trip to Taiwan just could never happen, right? We were just always busy. Until a few weeks ago, we planned it. We said, let's take this trip before it gets too late. We went to Taiwan. I got to take my mother to Taiwan, take her around. We stayed in a really nice place. Ate at some, and we just did it up. And she was very happy. And my sister flew in from England, joined us for about a week, and we just had a great time. We visited some family that still live in Taiwan. And we were out there. My mother and I were out there for 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, everybody went home, and I said to myself, I don't really have to go home. My kids are in college, right? I don't have anything to go home to at this point. I'm gonna stay, and so I picked a point on the map close by that was visa-free entry, and happened to be Bangkok, Thailand. And so I flew over to here. I have a flight to catch actually in a couple hours. I'm gonna fly back to Taiwan, um, and honestly, I don't even know if I'm gonna go back to the States. I might extend a little further, but it's crazy, man. I in the 13 plus years in this that I've been sober this time, there has not been a single night that has gone by, no matter where I was at in the world, that I didn't get on my knees at the end of the day and thank God. Every night I've been I've been in a yeah, I've been everywhere all over the world, and every single night I get down on my knees and I thank God for another day sober. Thank him for the things that I have, and I always remind myself that he's always here with me. And I've been fortunate enough to meet so many people, um, including you, Joe. I mean, who'd have thought, man? Who'd have thought that I would venture to Knoxville, Tennessee, right? And meet a bunch of, man, solid and cool dudes, man, out there. It's like a second home to me now. I'm out there, what, maybe 2, sometimes 3 times a year, and I enjoy it. I look forward to going out there. I could never live out there, but I love visiting out there. uh and it's crazy how it's ended up to me being on your podcast at 6 a.m., live streaming from Bangkok, man. What a life. Sean, I'm just gonna wrap it up with this. There's a scene from Jerry Maguire where he's in the bathroom. Jerry Maguire and Cuba Gooding Jr., right? They're in the bathroom and they're going back and forth. And Jerry Maguire's telling him, listen, man, I'm trying to help you. And Cuba's like, what do you want me to do? What can I, like, just tell me what to do. And he's like, you want me to eat lima beans? I'll eat lima beans. And so that became like a little mantra, like for me and Sean. Like, what do you want me to do? And, you know, he was sometimes, I mean, I'm just going through it. And he would just tell me, listen, you need to do, and he would just look at me and just say lima beans. I'm like, okay, you know, that was kind of like the trigger, the words to be like, listen, you got to, you know, got to do what you got to do, right? You know what I mean? Do what it takes, you know, even when it's uncomfortable, even if you don't want to. Even when I got to get up at 5 o'clock in Bangkok, right? I had to call in early night, my last night in Bangkok last night, because I had to get up early for this podcast. Just got to do what you got to do. It's lima beans, you know. You want me to eat lima beans, man? I eat lima beans, you know. And that's it, man. It's just part of the deal, I guess, you know. Yeah, man. Life's been really good. I'm blessed. I am very, very blessed, you know. And can't wait to be back in Knoxville, Tennessee at some point, so I can hug you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Oliver, for sharing your experience, strength, and hope, and for getting up so early to be on the show, man. I really appreciate it. And for the rest of you folks, please subscribe to our friends at thedailyponderables.com, your recovery source for inspiration and encouragement every day. A new episode of The Cup of Joe Show is released every Thursday at noon. Visit thecupofjoeshow.net, or you can listen to the show on your favorite podcast apps. Podbean, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the "the." Please like, follow, subscribe, and share, because someone out there needs to hear this today. Have a good day, everybody.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience, strength, and hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.